Hello, my name's Ulysses, and I hunt monsters for the government. And I don't mean people. Vampires, zombies, demons, werewolves, hell, even a Wendigo, you name it, I've encountered it. Anyway, a little background on me. I was born in the bayous of Louisiana. I hunted gators for most of my life. Then the government comes and they say, Ulysses, we want you to work for us, hunting monsters. Can't say I blame them. I'm the best damn gator hunter in Louisiana, and I guess they figured I'd be pretty good at that too. I won't say how much I'm paid, but it's a hell lot more than any gator will back me. Now, without further delay, I'll begin my survival guide to monsters. Let's begin with the basics, shall we? Vampires. I want you to take any stereotypical vampire and ditch everything you know. While it's true the bastards hate sunlight, they aren't killed by it, and they don't give a damn about crosses or coffins. A real vampire is usually between 6 to 7 feet tall. They have teeth like a beaver almost, big and sharp. They are nocturnal, and when they aren't active during the day, they roam caves and underground areas like sewers. And they aren't like Dracula. They aren't, nor were they ever human. They're pale and look sort of like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. They're primal bloodsuckers. And trust me, a vampire feeding is never as clean as a bite to the neck. They hate sunlight not because it hurts them, but because they lurk in caves and other dark places their whole lives. Speaking of which, they usually live anywhere from 20 to 40 years. They usually prey on animals, but will attack humans in their territory. They live in dens like wolves. A good sign a vampire den is nearby is there will be no life in the cave, no insects, bats or plants, nothing. The only way to kill him is destroying the hit. Moving on. Zombies. Now admittedly, these fellas are pretty close to what you think. Shambling corpses, hungry for flesh. But they're pretty harmless. I mean, they are walking corpses. They can barely bite. Barely. If they break the skin, disinfecting the wound should be enough. I've been bitten a few times, so I'd know. Not much to say on them really. Avoid the teeth. Oh, one more thing. The whole headshot thing is total bullshit. Only way to put them down for good is dismemberment or fire. And being bitten doesn't mean you'll turn. Zombies are what happens when some idiot kids play with a Ouija board in a graveyard. Spirits lodge themselves in these corpses. Anyway, that's my guess. Moving on. Werewolves. Werewolves are just as mean as they are in the movies. However, they're bigger than in the movies. In all reality, they're about 12 feet tall and not friendly. Full moons are a myth kinda. They turn during 3 scenarios. A full moon, a lunar eclipse, and a blood moon. But the transformation lasts about a week, not a single night. And there's no talking to the person inside. That's a good way to get killed. Lycanthropy is not transmitted through bites. In fact, it's genetic. It's rarely passed down from generation, and they're pretty rare indeed. Also, kids with lycanthropy are like 6 feet tall puppies. Just an FYI. A werewolf can be stopped by 2 methods. The simplest is a bullet to the head. No need for silver. Method 2 is the cure. Stopping the beast from feeding for the entirety of the transformation will cure them of their status as a werewolf. Also, women can be carriers of the gene, but they cannot become werewolves themselves. Again, do not try to say that shit about. I know you're in there somewhere. It won't work. Demons. Okay, so everything you know is pretty accurate for these guys. They're otherworldly entities, and as evil as they get. Some are true monsters. Others are Saturday morning cartoon villain kind of evil. I have performed exorcisms. As if need be, I've had to burn a few people at the stake to save their souls. Not much to say here, so I'll move on. Sasquatch. The big one. Old Bigfoot is like a cross between a grizzly and a gorilla. 800 pounds of hair and bad attitude. I've only ever killed one. I've encountered them a few dozen times. They have hands like a fist of razor blades. Do not approach a Sasquatch. And for God's sakes, don't shoot it. You'll just piss it off. They stick to themselves most times and live in the Northwest. chupacabra. Remember how I described the vampires? This is their canine cousin. They're not very friendly, and sometimes can be found living in the same dens as vampires. They can be tamed, but I wouldn't recommend trying it. The average chupacabra is about the size of a German shepherd. They have no hair or pigment, and they can bite as hard as any gator I've encountered. A shotgun can put them down though. If you encounter a pack of them, stick your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. The Devil. I met Old Scratch a few years back. He's actually not a bad guy. I mean, he is the prince of lies and darkness and evil and all of that shit. But he doesn't make deals for souls or anything. Really, he just kinds of floats around existence, tempting people to sin, cheating on their spouses, murder, endorsing New Jersey, etc. He doesn't care for it, mind you. It's just the influence his presence has. He typically takes the form of a middle-aged, handsome man in a black suit, with a red undershirt, black tie and vest. He might also take the form of a woman in a blood-red dress. The easiest way to tell the devil is no matter what form he takes, he has a scar on his left hand, a snake tattoo on his forearm, and burn scars on his back. He doesn't even try tempting me anymore. I think he sees me like a therapist. When he's off the clock, so to speak, he's just kind of depressed. The demons do all the possession and stuff. He just kind of wants to be rid of it all. Anyway, that's all I've got time for right now. These are just some of the basics, so you know what to do if you encounter one of these guys. Hey everybody, Ulysses here, and if you're here from the first part, welcome to part 2 of my little survival guide. This time, I'll be covering some of the lesser known creatures and monsters I've dealt with. Urban legends will also be addressed. So, here we go with my guide to facing down life's shit shows. Skinwalkers. The shape-shifting assholes love to inhabit the western parts of the states. They usually take on the form of a wolf or jackal with a human face. They can mimic any voice, and I think they read minds too. One once imitated my mom to fuck with me. The bullet I put in his head didn't do more than stun him. But they hate wrought iron. I know that because I impaled him with one and he didn't get back up. I'm saying he, due to the fact it had a man's face. Anyway, they seem to be vulnerable to wrought iron. Moving on. Wendigos. Skinwalkers and Wendigos are often confused with each other from a perspective of culture. But they're distinctly different. Wendigos are actually similar to real vampires in appearance. Pale, gangly, big teeth, but their head is misshapen and resembles a deer or cow skull with antlers. They have a mane of black hair down their backs and fingers with claws like a switchblade. They're loners and eat flesh. They prey on campers in the northeastern US. Unlike vampires, bullets won't put these guys down. No, you need to destroy their heart and burn the body. They're also fast as fuck. So yeah, good luck if you encounter one of these fellas. The Jersey Devil. Okay, so this is a thing I couldn't kill, but I did manage to catch, and it's currently held by the government in a private facility. Head of a horse, feet of a goat, bat wings, and a long forked tail. This asshole has been terrorizing the Pine Barrens of New Jersey for a few centuries now, or had been. Took me 2 weeks to track it, but I finally trapped the bastard. Caught him using some bait of a freshly killed chicken in a snare. Shot off its wings, and I tranked it. Ugly bastard is currently holed up somewhere in Nevada. If he does get out, I track him again, and I might not let it go this time. Kappas. For those who don't know, Kappas are sort of like turtles. They're famously a part of Japanese folklore, but they've showed up over here too. They look like turtles, but have some kind of growth on their heads that holds water. If it ever dries, they die, mostly due to their gills being located there. They're mostly friendly, but they can be twisted little bastards too. They've drowned more than a few people, even tried to do that to me. Luckily, they aren't that strong. On land. If you see them, watch yourself and stay out of the water, and you should be fine. Trolls. Trolls vary in appearance and can be any from 2 to 5 feet tall. They're in tribes, a lot like primitive people. They're ugly little fellas covered in warts and they have jagged, crooked teeth. They like to stay away from humans. However, this isn't always the case. If approached with honest intention, they'll leave you be. However, they can sense it when you lie, and will attack and kill those who try to trick them. They'll then eat the body of the victim and use their bones to make spears and items like vases, bowls, etc. The only way to kill a troll is destroying their hit completely. Ogres. Shrek they are not. These big fellas are about 12 feet tall, all the way to 18 feet tall. They do eat people. In fact, I reckon we're their favorite thing to eat for supper. But I'm getting off topic. Ogres live in swamps and bayous. They make their homes out of large, rotted trees. An ogre in the area is usually signified by the smell of rotting meat and shit. They're big, scaly, and have teeth the size of a steak knife. They're usually green, blue, or purple scaled, but this varies by the area. Do not approach an ogre den. They will kill any trespassers on sight. Banshees. The loud ladies are some of the nastiest and most evil creatures. They can kill you if you're in earshot of their scream. Well, kinda. If you hear their scream, they know it, and when you're sleeping, they creep in your house like a mist and suck the life from your resting body. It'll look like a heart attack. Banshees hate mirrors. Don't know why, but they do, and they only come if you hear the scream. If you don't, for whatever reason, but we're still in earshot, then it won't realize you are in earshot. They also love kidnapping children. Banshees can be killed, but only through live burial or cutting out their hearts. Don't try to fight them. If you heard their scream, it's too late. The Men in Black. The Men in Black aren't humans. They're something else. I'm not quite sure what. I do know that their suits aren't suits. That's their skin. And their sunglasses cover hollow socket eyes with little beady red eyes in the center of the sockets. I think they're from another planet, honestly. They don't like being called out on it and turn pretty hostile when confronted. I've killed one before, but the rest have a way of cheating death. Bullets are pretty effective to stopping them, but decapitation seems to work best. The government don't like them and have a kill on sight order placed on them. Now, I'd like to change pace. I figured you'd like to hear about one of my encounters, so I'll tell you about my first run-in with a vampire. I heard about a bunch of animal attacks where the victims were drained of blood. All the attacks were happening in a national park, so I did some investigating. I pinpointed the location of each attack and made a map. Found all of them were near an old mine. So I grabbed my gear and got to work. I lined the roof of the cave with explosives and went down, armed with a flashlight, a road flare, and my trusty pistol. I went down into the old cave. Wasn't long till I saw one of the ugly bastards. Not what I was expecting, honestly. It looked like a skinny frail man with big teeth. It turned to me and hissed. I was spotted, naturally, and the rest started running towards the noise. I pulled out a flare and held it out towards the monsters. They all scuttled away from the flare. I ran out of the shaft and blew it shut. Unfortunately, one of them got out, and instead of turning to dust like I expected, he jumped on me. He started biting at my neck, but I stopped him by shoving the flashlight between my neck and his jaw. I kicked it away, and it jumped at me again. Before it could land, I blew its brains out. I grabbed a knife from the back of my truck and sawed the bastard's head off. Figured it'd make a nice trophy. If you have any monsters you'd like covered, give me a shout. That's all I got for today. Till next time, this has been Ulysses. Watch yourselves. Ulysses here. Welcome to Chapter 3 of my little guidebook to life's ugliest truth. There are monsters in this world. Worst of all is the one we call man. But I'm not here to talk about human monsters, as I'm sure you've already figured out. I won't lie to you. I really don't know what to put in this section. We both know why you're here. So, why put it off anymore? Goatman. This ugly bastard and his kin can be found in Maryland. And yes, there is more than one. They're smarter than most monsters I've dealt with. They're capable of using axes. I have a pretty nasty scar from my run-in with the Goatman of Beltsville. I took his head after chopping off its head, and while I didn't see anymore, I've heard of more sightings since I killed the fucker, so I can only assume there's A. a copycat, or B. more goat people? Either way, they're stronger than any man, but a simple decapitation seems to do the trick. Oh, and don't kick them in the groin. They don't like that. In fact, let me go off course for a second. I figured that all y'all enjoyed my little story about my vampire encounter, that you'd like to hear more of my work. So from now on, I'll be including a story about my experiences with each entry in this guide here. Sound good? Okay, here's my story about the time I hunted the Goatman of Maryland. I was still new to the whole killing monsters thing, and to be honest, I expected this Goatman to be something like a Scooby-Doo villain. I mean, a half-man, half-goat? That's just stupid right there. When I got to Beltsville, I asked the locals about the Goatman. Most of them just passed it off as a ghost story, but some swore it was true. It was said to hunt in the woods near Fletchertown Road. I went out to the woods, and thanks to me working for the government, closed it down. And then I set up traps all along the road, set up a stand in a nearby tree. I must have been up there for a few hours, because I woke up by the sound of a bear trap snapping shut, then a roar like a pissed off gorilla. I grabbed my gun and went to the scene, and sure enough, there he was, the Goatman. He looked an awful lot like Bigfoot. He was about 7 feet tall and covered in hair. He had the head of a goat, but with long sharp teeth. With no effort, it seemed, he pulled himself free. He turned at me and snarled. He raised his axe and swung it. I ducked just in time as it sunk into a tree with a loud thwack. I unloaded a clip into him, but I reckon that just pissed him off because he swatted me like a fly. He grabbed his axe from the tree and came at me again. I rolled out of the way as the head of the weapon landed near mine. Using my man instincts, I kicked him right in the jewels. He showed pain, but looked pissed. He stumbled back a bit, looking like a ram ready to charge. He did just that, and I shot him in the back of the head. I heard the large wood-cutting axe drop to the ground, and I dove for it. Grabbing it, it was way heavier than any axe I'd ever used. Wouldn't stop me though. I swung it and heard a thud. Two actually, as the Goatman's head fell into my lap. I breathed a sigh of relief. Guess it wasn't a hoax after all. I threw the ugly bastard's head in the back of my truck and radioed in for pickup of the body. It's currently stuffed on my wall, in case any of y'all was wondering. Anyway, on to the next ugly. Sirens. Now admittedly, I've only ever encountered a few of these ladies. They aren't just sea creatures either. They're more like a stereotypical vampire. They lure men in before showing what they really are and dragging them to the deep. Underneath the beautiful exterior is one ugly motherfucker. Basically, she has all the teeth of an anglerfish and the face of one too. However, just like with the Goatman, a simple decapitation will kill him. My first time seeing one of them was down in Louisiana. I was in New Orleans investigating a bunch of dead bodies washing up on the beach. They all had chunks bitten out of them. First, I chalked it up to sharks or maybe even a gator, but the bite marks were too spread out for either. Too clean too. Did some digging, found out all the victims loved them some women of the night, if you know what I mean. Started investigating every brothel and whorehouse in the Big Easy. I pinned the siren down to a specific one, owned by a Madame de Sade. The only problem is, this wasn't just a brothel, and there wasn't one siren. It was a siren den. They'd lured these poor bastards in. Their brothel was near the water, so it was a perfect honey trap. Yes, I'm looking for some fun, if you know what I mean, I said to a pretty young receptionist. She winked and said, "Sure thing, honey." She led me to the back, and I was hit with a wave of perfume. I was greeted by a brunette with green eyes. "Maddie here will take care of you." It was as I was being pulled into the room that the smell became clearer. It wasn't perfume. It was sea salt. She smiled at me and pulled me close. "You're so cute. I could just eat you up," she whispered into my ear. She then tried to surprise me and bite at my neck with those huge teeth. I pushed her away, gun to her chin. "Nice try, sweetheart." and pulled the trigger. Just then, the smell of dead people, dead fish, and seawater all at once filled the room. I damn near puked. The others kicked in the door. "Damn, you ladies were a whole lot prettier a few minutes ago," I said, the venom in my voice filling the air. "Dinner time, girls," who I could only guess was the receptionist, screeched out of that ugly mug of hers. "Eat this, you ugly bitches," I said, pulling a sawed-off shotgun strapped to my thigh out of its holster. I blew the first one who came at me across the room with a shot. I punched the next and used the butt of the gun to knock out a third. The last two looked at each other. One turned to me, saying with a voice like broken glass and sandpaper, "You're not supposed to fight back. Why aren't our voices working?" I pulled out an earplug. "Gotta love 'em," I said, smirking as I reloaded the gun. I let loose 2 more shots, splattering their heads on the wall behind them. Looking at the rest, who were all still breathing, with the exception of the first one I killed, I sighed, pulled out my hunting knife. "I really hate to have to dull this blade." I got to work, sawing off their heads, knocking them back out if they woke up. Before you ask, I ran out of bullets. Thought there'd only be 1 siren, not 6. I'll be the smartass here, and I'd appreciate it if you'd let me do my thing. I would include more monsters, but I felt like I should tell you folks about this. The devil came to me yesterday. It went something like this. "Hello, Ulysses," a smooth voice said as I drank at a bar. I turned and saw a beautiful woman in a blood-red dress. Her left hand had a burn scar, and a snake tattoo wrapped itself up her left forearm. I noticed the thing seemed to move as she sat beside me. "What you want, Nicole?" I said, using the name the devil used as a female. Play on his Olnick name. At least, that's my guess. She ordered a Bloody Mary and gave me a smile. I would say it could send a chill down the spine of the devil himself. But, well, it is the devil. "Oh, come on, I just want to talk," I snorted in response. "Don't you have a baby to eat or something?" I took a sip of my whiskey. "Don't be cruel. We both know that's not my style, Ulysses. Besides, Dad would never allow it," she said, pointing to the ceiling. I noticed her face was ever shifting, and her eyes was as black as night. "What do you want?" I asked again, getting impatient. "Fine, I'm here to tell you to stop what you're doing." I turned to her and said, "And why the hell would I do that?" "Oh, you mortals. You're so naive. It's cute. Do you really think the people you work for will let you just leave when you're done? I know a thing or two about betrayal." She grabbed my hand and placed it on her back. I felt the scars on her back. I would have pulled away, but she was inhumanly strong. "I like you, Ulysses. You're the only person who gets me. I'm just trying to help you is all. Do you really think you're working for the government? No. Your bosses are a lot older than that." She stirred her drink with her finger, causing it to slightly ignite. "Thanks, Beezle bitch, but I don't need your help." She sighed and said, "Fine." Standing up, she walked to the door. I smelled fire as she left out the door. I paid my tab and stood up. How'd she know I was thinking about leaving this job behind? And what if she was right? I mean, the government was going through all this trouble to cover these things up. Why did it ever let me walk away? This morning when I woke up, there was a number burned into my arm. It didn't hurt, but it was there. A phone number. I knew this was the work of the devil. Why were they trying to help me? What was the bitch up to? Doesn't matter. Sorry I didn't have as much to tell you about with monsters. I've had a lot to think about. There is a zombie case the next town over, so I'll probably let you guys know how that goes. Oh, and one more thing. I found a letter in my glove box. Don't listen to Satan. We're, and more specifically, I am who you should listen to, and you'd do well not to deal with the devil. L. I'll keep you all updated on this and have more tips to keep you alive. Until then though, Ulysses out. Ulysses here. Sorry about the late upload. This time, I'm gonna cut out descriptions and tell you all about my latest case. Because boy, even for my line of work, it was a doozy. If you remember, I told y'all about a zombie case I was going to investigate. Well, it wasn't no zombie. It was a skinwalker. Or rather, a pack of them. Shape-shifting assholes took the form of typical zombies, vampires, etc. to hunt prey. Can't really say why. Their usual form usually serves them fine. I'm not gonna go into detail about how I tracked them down or figured out what was really going on, because that's not important right now. Long story short, I found their nest. Usual fare as far as skinnies go, bones and the smell of dead meat. Skinwalker nests are usually made from fur, flesh, tendons, bones, etc., all woven together in cave systems. But again, I wasn't too fazed by any of this at this point. It was what I found that threw me off. There were dozens of corpses, skinwalker corpses. Another hunter maybe? Then I noticed the slashes. What the? I kneeled down. No normal animal can take down a pack of skinwalkers. These things were apex predators. So what happened to them? I felt sick to my stomach. Skinwalkers weren't killed easy. I know that from experience. So that meant something else was in these woods. Night was already starting to fall, and I was miles away from any road or city. Hell, my truck was a few hours hike from me. I pulled out some jerky, ate a piece, and got to work setting up a makeshift camp. A fire wouldn't be necessary for warmth, but I didn't want to risk whatever killed them coming for me. Hopefully, it would stay away from the light. I wouldn't be getting any sleep that night. Or rather, I couldn't. Too risky. I stoked the fire a bit, and heard a voice behind me. Someone's on edge. I turned around, and there stood once again the devil. The fuck? You have something to do with that? I gestured to the cave. He, taking the form of an old park ranger, shook his head. Nope, not me. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it with his index finger on the scarred hand. Figured you could use the company. He took a drag of the smoke and exhaled. Never did much care for these. The taste reminds me of home though. He muttered, the fire reflecting off the dark sunglasses he wore. Why are you here, Nick? He smiled. Can't I check in on an old friend? We both know you and I aren't friends, I replied, listening to the fire pop. Touché. If I'm honest, I've got nothing else going on. It is a Tuesday. Not much temptation to do during Tuesdays. He sat down, and I looked up. So you're gonna bother me now? Now, where's that famous Southern hospitality? Didn't they teach you manners in the bayou? Yeah, they also taught us not to fuck with the devil. Well, that's fair. I just wanted to warn you about the Crier. The what? I looked up, and he was gone. The fuck? Before I could react, I was thrown down by what felt like razors. I looked up and saw a really tall thing. It wasn't like any monster I'd ever seen. It was dark, but I'll try to give you the best description I can. It was probably about 8 feet tall. It stood up like a man, and it had no eyes. Just a large gaping mouth with more teeth than a chainsaw. It had 4 arms, with 2, I think, coming out of its back. Each arm had razor-sharp claws with 4 fingers on each. I could feel the blood gushing from the wound it gave me. What in the fuck are you? I said, ignoring the blood in my mouth from the impact. It let out a roar. I think it was a roar, but it sounded like a baby crying. I wasn't armed, so I had no choice but to run. It was pitch black, and all I had was a flashlight. I could hear it running after me. That damn crying sound behind me. I ducked behind a tree to catch my breath. What the fuck was that thing? I knew it was what killed the skinwalkers, but what the fuck was it? The wound on my chest had soaked my shirt in blood, and I could barely move, but I had to keep moving. That thing was gonna find me, and I didn't much fancy being tomorrow's leftovers. Or I would have kept moving, but my wounds and generally how tired I was wouldn't allow for it. I spent the rest of the night sitting in darkness, having lost my flashlight during my run from the thing I could only guess was the Crier. I heard the sound of it crying the whole night, but luckily I didn't run into it anymore. Well, not before daybreak. I made it to my truck around 9 AM several hours later, and just as I did, I heard the crying again. I grabbed my shotgun from the back of my truck and readied myself. Everything hurt. Everything. But I wouldn't go down without a fight. It crawled down from a tree like a spider in front of me. It swiped at me, and I moved. I kinda regret that, looking at the huge slashes in my truck's door. But back to the story. I shot it in the mouth, but all that did was stun it. I ran to my truck and cranked it up. I floored the pedal as the ugly bastard gave chase. Eventually, it gave up and fled into the woods, but not before fucking my truck up real good. I'm in the hospital now. Luckily, they let me keep my phone. I told my superiors about my encounter, and they said they didn't have any record of anything like that. So what the fuck is in those woods? And why is it just now showing up? Did Satan have something to do with it? I couldn't be sure. If he did, why warn me about it? I'm leaving this hospital ASAP. I gave a cover story of a bear attack. My bosses are sending in a team to hunt that thing. There's no chance in hell I'll be joining them. I'm no coward, but I've always said, there's a fine line between bravery and stupidity. Anyway, that's all for now. Ulysses out. Hey everyone, Ulysses here. An update on my life and the situation I found myself in. The team that entered those woods in hunt of the Crier, they didn't come back out. At least, not all of them. Satan is showing up in my dreams now. They keep hinting at something bigger at work. I'm not sure what Old Scratch is getting at. I'm in a motel in bumblefuck nowhere. It reminds me of home, honestly. I haven't heard from the bosses in 3 days. I have a hunch about something in the area. But since I haven't any new updates for you folks, I figured I'd share a story. So, after thinking about it, I figured I'd tell the story of my first encounter with the Men in Black and the West Virginian Mothman. I had heard some stuff about the Mothman in the old Ordnance Works near Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Figured it was worth looking into, so I set out one night to the site. As I got closer to it in my beat-up truck, a black Cadillac with tinted windows began following me a few hundred feet behind me. I ignored it mostly, but when I stopped at a point I judged suitable to hike the rest of the way, so did it. 2 men in black suits stepped out of the car. They had on fedoras and pitch black sunglasses. They were taller than me, about 6'6" each. Their skin was pale, almost see-through. Their lips were completely void of color. "Excuse me, sir. This is a restricted area," one said in an emotionless voice. The other nodded, grabbing my arm. I shook it loose and said, "I work for the government," spitting the wad of tobacco in my jaw. The one who grabbed me's hand was cold and a little slimy. "This is a restricted area," he repeated, stepping towards me. He got a little too close for comfort and grabbed me roughly. I responded with a punch right to his jaw. It hurt me more than him. Felt like punching a wall. I knocked off his glasses though and hat. His head was devoid of any hair, and his eyes were hollowed sockets with little red beady eyes. They had a faint glow in the night, like lightning bugs. He said, in unison with the other man who stepped closer as well, "You are trespassing on government property. Leave. Now." He shoved me into my truck, leaving a small dent in his wake. I took my revolver from my side and put it in his face. "I don't know what the hell you are, but you have about 5 seconds to back off before I put a bullet between those beady eyes of yours." That was when that thing smiled, an inhumanly white one. It got closer, and I followed up on my threat. I put a bullet between its eyes, but it just sat up like fucking Michael Myers. The other grabbed the gun and bent the barrel like a fucking cartoon. It pushed me down with enough force that I felt a rib crack. I quickly got in my truck and locked the door. They began rattling the handle, and I knew they'd get in eventually. That's when I remembered my machete. Ever since I got lost in the bayou a few years back, I kept the machete in a pocket on the roof of my truck. I grabbed the blade and opened the door with enough force to knock them both down. One of them stood, and I quickly cut the fucker's head off. The other cocked its head and spoke. "This isn't over, Ulysses. Good evening." He turned and went back to his car, stopping only to retrieve his sunglasses. Breathing a sigh of relief, I got back on my original task. The dudes in dark had almost made me forget why I was out here. On a bad leg from the run-in with the men, I hiked through the woods to what the locals called the TNT area. Placing some snares with the aid of a flashlight, I looked around in the trees. If the Mothman is real, figures he'd lurk in trees. As I looked around, I noticed a pair of bright red orbs in a tree. Shining my light in their direction, they quickly vanished as I heard the rustling of leaves like something moving through them. I heard something get snagged in my snare. I ran to the trap, but found whatever was trapped had been cut free. I felt an overwhelming wave of nausea and saw the orbs again. I shined my light up, and before I collapsed, I saw the Mothman. It was upside down like a bat. It had a head like, well, a moth, and it had bat-like wings about 8 feet across. It looked 6, maybe 7 feet tall. I was really weak as the nausea worsened. I got to my feet and drew my knife. The Mothman responded by flying off. Next thing I knew, I was being grabbed and pulled into the air. It had feet like a cat, sorta. It had claws like a bird, but they weren't talons. It was similar to, as I said, a cat. I was 20 feet in the air at this point, and against my better judgment in all honesty, I managed to stab its leg. It dropped me, screeching in pain. So, trees broke my fall, but it didn't stop me getting a broken arm and a few cracked ribs. I blacked out on impact as well. I was woken the next morning by a paramedic. A hiker had found me and called for help. I never found the Mothman again, no matter how hard I looked. The men in black now are a lot less civil towards me, and I still have scars from where Mothman grabbed me. I'm not quite sure what to do about them. I'm writing this a few hours after the last paragraph. Speak of the devil. As I was writing, there was a knock at my door. I saw the familiar black sunglasses and suits. "Hello, Mr. Ulysses. We work for the Federal Bureau of..." "Cut the shit. I know what you are. Now why are you here?" The leader of the duo of men in black removed his sunglasses, revealing those beady red eyes. "You're a clever one." I pulled a cigarette out of a pack of Marlboros and gestured as to offer him one. "No thank." "It's thanks." "Yes, of course." He smiled politely. "Normally you guys are trying to kill me. Can we wrap this up?" I said, impatient as I lit the cigarette. His smile wavered, and he continued. "We're here to tell you to forget what you saw in those woods." "The Crier?" "Indeed. Forget you saw it." I avoided eye contact with the pale bastard as I exhaled smoke. "And why should I do that?" "You wouldn't want it to find your mother, now would you?" This made me pause. "Is that a threat?" "It's not anything. Ulysses, do not investigate it. That's our jurisdiction, not yours." I slammed the door in his face. Why were they trying to shut me up about the Crier? I had no intentions to tell anyone, but that's not the point. It's confusing to say the least. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Ulysses out. First off, fuck nuclear radiation. This is Ulysses, and I have a doozy of a story to tell. I went on a hunt for Wendigo in the Nevada desert. Boy, I wish it was just Wendigo. I've been making my way back to civilization for about 3 days, And now that I'm in a place that's safe, I'm typing this up. It all began after the last post. If you remember, I hadn't much to share in the way of news stories. Well, I do now. There had been brutal animal attacks along a stretch of road in the Nevada desert that I can't legally name. From descriptions and eyewitness reports, I narrowed it down to the Wendigo. It fit their MO and their usual hunting grounds. I called in a favor and had that part of the road closed off. For maintenance was the excuse we gave others. Even had some undercover agents pose as road workers. They knew what we were dealing with, or at least they did as far the Wendigos go. The skinny bastards made their first attack at dusk. A guy, his name was Tim I think, was smoking a cigarette by himself and got his throat ripped out. Barely heard his screams because he was drowning in his own blood. When I arrived, the Wendigo was already feasting on his innards. Before I attacked it though, I was thrown off. This was no normal Wendigo. It was hideously deformed. Well, more than usual. It had 3 sets of antlers instead of the normal 2 and had teeth forming in its neck. Its hair was patchy, revealing tumorous skin beneath it. Not to mention, it had a 3rd eye on its cheek. It turned and hissed at me, leaping off its lunge and stalking towards me. I noticed it walked with a limp, as one of its legs was actually shorter than the other. Drawing my gun, I put 3 bullets in its chest, right in the heart. It fell dead, and before I burned the body, I got a closer look. Its pale skin was horribly diseased. The patchy hair down its back had revealed tumors, sure, but the rest of it wasn't much better. I shined my light on it, and another hunter, a Russian fella named Vladimir, smelling of booze and cheap cologne, walked up behind me. "Wendigo?" he asked. "Yup. Say, have you ever seen one like this?" I stood and shined the light. "Yes, but only in one location. Pripyat." I looked at him. "Apologies, you Americans probably know it better as Chernobyl. It wasn't Wendigo, but it was like this." We burned the body, and then we waited. There could have been more Wendigo in the area, and the smell of their brethren's burning carcass would likely draw them in. Sure enough, within an hour or so, I smelled rotting meat. A Wendigo pounced on me out of the darkness. It was much bigger than any Wendigo I'd ever encountered, about 7 or 8 feet tall. Its teeth were horribly rotten, with several poking out of its gum line. I shoved the skinny fucker off of me and got a look at the full beast. It had 7 fingers on one hand and 5 on the other. Its skin wasn't pale, but an oily black, and its normal skull-shaped head was warped, looking half like a deer skull and half like a human, with misshapen antlers on its neck. Its hair was almost completely fallen out, revealing bubbling tumors beneath. I realized then that these poor bastards weren't normal Wendigo. They must have been mutated by the nuclear tests of the 50s in Nevada. Whatever the case, it didn't look happy with me. I fired off 2 rounds into its heart, but that did little more than stun it. It ran at me again, and I quickly drew my knife as it tackled me to the ground. It bit a chunk out of my shoulder, but before it could do more, I plunged the knife into its heart. I pushed its now limp body off of me and covered it in gasoline. As I got ready to light the match, I saw another watching out of my eye. It was about the size of a child. I had taken to calling young Wendigo Wendelings. They weren't nearly as vicious as their parents, but would be when they got bigger. Just like the rest, its skin had tumors. It feebly walked towards me, sniffing at the fallen Wendigo before me. It looked at me with the eyes of an intelligent creature, but it was still wrong. It looked like it had a nasty case of scoliosis, as its spine was bent all out of shape. It had a thumb growing in its forehead and far too many fingers on its hands. Sighing, I reloaded the pistol and put a bullet in its chest. As the bodies burned, it dawned on me that these guys were probably in a lot of pain, and they were doing what any animal in pain did: lash out. The Wendeling had probably been retarded as far as Wendigos go. And no, I'm not using it in an insulting way. There was no way its brain was fully developed. Radiation had clearly mutated these poor bastards. Insert some shit about man being the real monsters here. I called to confirm the Wendigo sightings and was told to stay put with the rest of the crew until daybreak. I saw Vlad getting shit-faced and decided to join him. "You know Ulysses?" He drank a gulp on his vodka. "The American government may be shit, but, you know." I forgot where I was going with that. I nodded and took a swig from the bottle. I heard a sudden scream. I ran over and saw a pack of mutated vampires had descended on the camp. Unlike the ones I had encountered previously, these guys were completely blind. Their eyes were milky white. Some had dislodged jaws like snakes, and others had eyes growing on their torso, milky white as well. Their skin were varying shades of black, gray, and blue. Their teeth were more like barbs than regular fangs, but they were vampires regardless. The feral bloodsuckers circled in on me, and I honestly almost shit myself, like I saw my life flashing before my eyes. Vlad ran through the pack, splitting them like the Red Sea with an improvised torch, using a bandana, a stick, and vodka. The creatures, sensing the heat of the flames, hissed and backed up. "Ugly fucks." I heard him curse to himself in Russian. Did I mention I picked up some Russian from my travels? Needed something to do on the long drives. "Ulysses, stay close to the flames. Even when blind, these fuckers hate it." He shooed them back as we made our way to a truck. Every time one got too close, he scared it away with the torch. We got in the truck and locking the doors. We radioed in for some backup, too many for us to take on. We kept the lights on all night. Neither of us slept. The battery died before sunrise, but I think they forgot about us. They never left the truck though. They banged on it, crawled on it. When the sun came up, they scattered. We took the opportunity to hightail it out of there. We walked down the empty stretch of road for 3 days. When we got back and radioed in, we found that a call for backup had never came through. We kept the fires burning hot during the nights. The mutant vampires were still out there, and there was no telling how big their colony was. Right now, I'm in some shitty hotel in Reno. No idea what happened to Vlad. All I do know is they sent more hunters to find the vampire's den. The Wendigos? Well, we aren't really sure if they are still out there. One thing I didn't mention was, I heard the wailing of the Crier one night. Vlad didn't even so much as budge, snoring heavily. But the wailing of that thing sounded in the distance. I knew it was hunting me. But nothing I could do now. Anyway, that's all I have time for now. This has been Ulysses. Hi there, Ulysses here, and this will be the final volume of my guide. I've taught you all how to deal with things from the Men in Black to nuclear mutants to Wendigos to vampires. But today, in our final lesson, I'll teach you how to deal with the most dangerous of them all. This monster knows no mercy for other of its kind, or its prey. Dozens have fallen to them. This monster, of course, is the one we call man. See, while all of these things kill man, they do what just comes natural to them. We're the ones hunting them to near extinction. So today, we learn how to best man. But first a story. After the nuclear vampire incident, that would make a great band name, side note, I was put on leave, as was Vladimir. The bosses didn't like the idea of radiated, mutated killing machines in the Nevada desert, so they sent in a death squad to clean up the mess. That's when it dawned on me. See, these things were not pleasant, sure, but we made them that way. They were just defending themselves. We made them mutants. Did I ever tell you I actually had a partner? Dude was a vet of this business. Went by the name of Helsing. Went missing not too long ago. Investigated some cursed channel or something. Not important. I'm rambling, aren't I? Back to the story. After the job in the desert, I started having dreams. Vivid ones. A voice from a pit speaking to me, and disfigured men. Looked like they were fused together. One of them, who wasn't fused to anyone else, had a really fucked up back. The rest seemed to be gathered around him. "Find me," he spoke, then kicked me into the pit. I didn't die though. Instead, I found myself face to face with something. It stood like a man, but its face was a mass of writhing vines and thorns. It took a branch-like finger and, grabbing my arm, carved coordinates into my arm. It spoke like 1,000 voices at once. Find us. It was then I woke up, my knife in my hand. I felt a stinging in my arm and saw the numbers. I won't give them away, but something told me I should go. Not a good idea, Chief, a familiar tone said as I got in the truck and drive to the coordinates using that Google thing. A teenage boy with long black hair, a horribly scarred left hand with a snake tattoo on the same arm, and fiery red eyes said from the driver's seat. Let me guess, one of yours? I said, looking at the devil beside me. No, actually, Dad and I don't know what the hell it is, to be honest. But trust me, you don't want to go to those coordinates. You won't come back. I raised an eyebrow and said, Oh, fuck off. You're literally the Prince of Lies. He sighed and, with a puff of smoke, vanished. When I arrived to the coordinates, I found a hatch. Nothing fancy, just a hatch. It was padlocked shut, but a few hits from a sledgehammer fixed that. Climbing down the hole, which had a ladder inside, I noticed old blood covering it. Not to mention body parts. A faint moaning from below. I heard the hatch swing shut. I climbed back up, but couldn't open it. The thing couldn't be from the inside. Shining my flashlight around as I hit the bottom of the ladder, the first thing I noticed was the smell of death. Rotting, bloody flesh, like something had been dead for a while. The halls around me stretched on for miles, it seemed. The faint hum of dying fluorescent lights filled the air. I wandered down a series of hallways for a bit, with no real destination. I stopped when I saw a room full of medical equipment. Experiment Chamber Number 1, a sign next to it said. I walked in and shined my light around the dimly lit room. Papers and blood were scattered about. A blood-splattered clipboard on a table caught my eye. Project Lovecraft? I questioned, reading it. Some kind of government experiment? Maybe. I threw it down and heard something behind me. A starving man in a lab coat came out of a nearby cabinet, swinging a fire axe. Whoa, easy there, Doc, I yelled, jumping as he swung his axe into the table beside me. Who are you? How did you get down here? Before I could respond, he cut me off. We need to leave this place. Now, before they find us. They? The 89A. He began to shove me along, but I easily stopped that, seeing as he looked like he hadn't ate in days. What the fuck are you talking about? Okay, just trust me. You don't want to find out. Just then, a hand scuttled in. He froze. And yes, I said a hand. Don't move. That one can't see us, he whispered. But I ignored it. I grabbed the axe and split the fucker between the fingers. Didn't need to know what it was to know that thing wasn't natural. It kept moving though. The gash quickly healed. And it grew. An eye in the wound? Shit! The crazy fucker in the lab coat panicked. I heard an inhuman scream from somewhere nearby. That was the last thing I remembered. I woke up being dragged by two things. They looked like, at one time, they were human, but now they were all wrong. They were writhing masses of limbs, eyes, and teeth. They threw me in a room with others. People who aren't dead, but very sick. Rashes were spreading, and I quickly looked around for my phone. Had to keep you guys updated with this stuff. If nothing else, I could help figure out how to kill these things. Maybe another hunter could stop them. After I asked around, I pieced together what had happened down here. Most of them had been brought here by something telling them to come. But the ones who were here before all hell broke loose, they told me a lot. This was a government bunker. Those things were man-made. They had been running some kind of experiments to make super soldiers. One got out, and well, that's how they got here. They turned others through bites, like zombies, but also merged with each other. They were bulletproof, fast as hell, and had regenerative abilities. The hand I saw was a scout for them. They had been hunting anyone who came down here. What can we do then? I finally asked. Wait to be eaten or turned, an infected scientist mumbled. Why haven't they bitten me then? I asked, and he looked up, looking surprised. They haven't? I can help, a voice said from the corner. From the burned hand and snake tattoo, I knew who it was, but didn't acknowledge his true identity. His name tag read L. Cipher. Well, I said. I can blow this place to home and back. What does that even mean? One of the infected said, and I replied, don't ask, but no, we need to get these people out of here. Can't be done. Broken Man won't let us. Another mumbled. Broken Man? A scientist laughed. The escape subject, patient fucking zero, he controls the rest. Found the notes of our hit researcher before he fully turned. I sighed and made a decision. Counting my bullets, 12 in total, I cocked my gun and sighed. I have an idea. With that, I walked around the room and executed all the infected. They were too weak to do anything but watch, honestly. I had 2 bullets left. A man-made monster. I turned to Cipher, whose body, despite having a bullet in the frame, was still fully conscious. Being the devil would do that. I told you not to come here. Shut up and tell me where this broken man is. After receiving instructions from him, I heard the door unlock as he snapped his fingers. Might wanna leave quick. These guys won't stay dead. I nodded. I made my way down the maze of labs, hallways, and blood-soaked bunk areas. I avoided the fleshy fucks and noticed less wall and more flesh as I approached the den of the broken man. Then I heard it. The crying of a baby. On cue, the crier ascended from above me, but stopped. It turned its head, and a normal human man approached it. But something was off. The man had a nasty case of scoliosis, it looked like. He patted its head and spoke to it in an unknown language. I didn't hesitate to put a bullet between his eyes, but he didn't flinch. He instead cocked his head and spoke again in that language. He grabbed me by the neck, nearly crushing my windpipe. He threw me to the wall as hands clasped out from inside of it, holding me down. I could feel them biting me. Yes, the hands were biting me. And he, wearing a smile, approached me. Why must the chosen always fight back? He said something, again in the language, and they let me go. Before I could do anything else, I passed out. I'm in an unknown part of the facility. There's a rash spreading, and I know I'm dying. I'm posting this just to say goodbye, and to say, fuck humanity. And also tell the devil if you see him, he owes me $12. He'll know. I have my gun to my temple. My final lesson is that to kill man, just stop them from being human. This is Ulysses. For the last time. Signing off.